Hi and welcome to this video in the MRDCL Fundamentals series. And in this video we're going to be looking at summing the rows of tables so that you can actually add rows to get some subtotals or a total in a table. I'm going to start this video by looking at some output and then looking at what script we write to achieve that. So I'm going to look at the tables first of all in this case. And here we've got two or three examples. The first table you can see here is almost like a check, which I know some people like to run on their tables. So what we're doing here, we have a single response question, 3 age groups, and this just checks, if you like, that the sum of those 3 rows adds to 100%. On the next table, we've got the same sort of thing going on, but this is a multi-response question, and you can see it adds up to 30, and it calculates that as 300% because the base here is 10. So this is actually saying that, if you like, that each respondent has an average of just 3 answers each from that multi-response question, because it adds to 30 and there are 10 respondents in there. When we go to the third table, now this is a little bit trickier because in here we've still got the sum of 10 at the bottom, which is 100%. But you can see in here we've got a subtotal, so we need a way to exclude that from the subtotal, because 35 plus includes the 4 people at 35 to 54 and the 3 people at 55 plus, and we don't want to double count those 7 people, otherwise we would get 17 in there. So it's not just a case of summing the rows, it's summing the rows but excluding that particular row that's a subtotal. And finally we go on to the brands table again. This time a little bit of a trick here in that we want the subtotal before the none of these. So the first example actually summed all the rows, including the none of these at the bottom. For this particular table, I want to exclude the none of these and put it in that particular place there so that it excludes that one response in that category. And finally we come to the fifth table, which in fact is a repeat of the previous one, but actually when I show you the script to calculate this, I'll be showing you that it's been calculated in a slightly different way, or very different way, to show you another way that you can actually get subtotals or sums of rows in your table. So let's go back to the first table now and start looking at the script that produced this extra line in here with the sum in it. So I'm going to switch to the script here. And you can see what I've got here, that everything looks quite normal. We've got a variable called age, but on the end there, I put an extra bit, which has F comma, which stands for false. And that's going to be an extra row that's going to appear in that table. And that row, you can see I've used the text sum there, but I put in 2 label controls. So the first label control is less than C greater than, or box C as we tend to call it. And that C there indicates that we want to count all the rows up to that point there. So that's what it's doing, the actual summation for us. And this label control here, boxed X or less than X greater than, means that I only want percentages. I don't want the actual whole numbers. And as we saw, if we flick back now to table 1, you'll see that's exactly what I've got. I've got the sum of the percentages here, but I'm not actually showing the count of 10 people. Let's move on to table 2 now and have a look at that. So now this time I've got a multi-response question where it overadds. Well, actually this is pretty much the same principle, except here I've just got a less than C greater than. I haven't put less than X greater than on that. So that's why we go back to the table. You'll see I've got the number here as 30 and the percentage on the base of 300%. Now we come to the third one, which was a little bit trickier because here we want to exclude the subtotal of people who said 35 plus. So let's go back to the code again. And there's another variable down here called age2. And the way that we do that is, well, you've got the less than C greater than on the sum row, so we get the total there. And I put the F on the end of the variable so it knows it's got an extra bit in the variable. But you'll see on this line here, the 35 plus subtotal, it says less than Q greater than, and what that means is exclude it from the summation. So it's only going to add the rows 16 to 34, 35 to 54, 55 plus when it gets to its sum, because it's going to exclude the line with the Q on. So that's the third example. On to the fourth one, and in the fourth one, you may recall that we left the none of these out of that, and that was just I could have used Q again to exclude it and left the sum at the bottom. That might have been confusing. I chose to put the sum in here, and so as you can see here, because I've got the sum in the middle here, there it is, it's doing the sum up to that point and ignoring the none of these that comes after it. So less than C greater than means the sum at this time, including all the rows. And finally, I showed you table 5, which I said had done this a completely different way. Now, the way that table 5 has been calculated, it achieves the same result as table 4, is by adding the rows together. So I've actually said that this row here, which is the 6th row, is the sum of row 1, row 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's been done by manip. So if we go down to the code here, you'll see that it says manip table 5, row 6 is table 5, row 1 plus 2, 3, 4, and 5, which of course has exactly the same effect. Now, probably C and Q is a better way of working in most cases, because it actually means you haven't got to put this manip stage in here at all. But if you want to do some automation on things like this, there is another video called Getting the Size of Variables and Tables for Automation that would, for example, trap the fact that there's 6 rows in this table and that you wanted to add the 5 previous rows to make that subtotal of 6. So if you had a whole batch of tables that you wanted to apply that to, there would be some automation techniques that are explained in that particular video, which we're not going to cover here. Well, I hope this video has been useful in explaining how you can get totals in tables, both for checking or just for additions on tables that you want. Thank you.